Tonight on The Best Times, we help you determine when assisted living is the right choice. You'll meet the inspiring president of the Tennessee Association of Blind Athletes. And we'll answer basic questions about prostate cancer. Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you. Hello, I'm Chris Hardaway. Welcome to this edition of The Best Times, a series that looks at life after 50. As we've seen on this show, the vast majority of people want to age in place and live in their own homes for as long as possible. But how long? The natural effects of aging, combined with one or more diseases or conditions, can make life in your home alone difficult or even impossible. But making the decision to move to an assisted living facility is often fraught with conflict. On the one hand is the practicality of needing assistance with aspects of daily living, and on the other is the emotional connection we all have with our home. So how do you make that decision for your aging parents or loved ones? How do you know when assisted living is the right choice? Before we start talking about some of the signs and clues that one can look for, let's talk first about this whole question. How hard is it to ask the question of yourself, is it time to put my loved one or parent in a facility?
I spoke with a woman the other day and she said, I can't wait to go to assisted living. They cook for you, they drive you places, they make your bed, they give you things to do. She said, this is going to be great. So that's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is the person who digs their heels in and said, I am not leaving this place unless it's in a pine box. I will not go out of my home. I'm staying here until I die. And that is when it really becomes an issue.
And we'll talk about that. Let's talk about that in a minute. But let's talk about some of the signs that we're going to look for. Maybe we should emphasize that these are signs, these are clues that you can pick up on. There's no one clue that may be the final decider, but these are just some indications. So let's talk first about the big picture signs, the red flags that may be waved. What are some of them?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think some are certainly personal care. If your parent or the senior you are looking after, their appearance is declining, their health is declining, their housekeeping skills are declining, just a general change in attitude and ability. Sometimes it happens so gradually, it's hardly noticeable.
What about the aspects of daily living, things like eating, dressing, taking medication, shopping? Mm-hmm. What about those aspects?
Those are all huge, and they are all cumulative. Certainly, I think medications is a big one. If you miss medications, or if you've taken medications and then you think, I don't remember if I took it, so you take a second round that day of the same medication. So you're either under or over medicated. Activities of daily living, like taking a shower. A lot of seniors think, every 3 or 4 days is enough. And maybe it isn't, particularly if there's an issue of incontinence. So that's a big red flag. If you're near your family member and you notice that the clothing hasn't been changed or soiled, or if there's body odor, those are things you need to be looking out for. Just again, subtle things that may be cumulative and you may not notice because it changes so gradually, but all of a sudden the big picture, you look at it and think, things are not as they should be.
You mentioned some things there that apply to sort of the physical signs, the kind of up close and personal signs. Mm-hmm. Are there some others that are like that?
Well, certainly physical appearance. and weight loss or a big weight gain. And certainly eating regularly and nutritious meals is something that can easily be forgotten or put by the wayside because your appetite is not there, or it's not worth cooking for one person, or there's no way to get to the grocery to get the things I want for dinner. So the eating issues and nutrition issues can be a big factor as well.
Let's talk about social signs, changes in friendship perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Everyone maintains a social level that they're comfortable with. And you may have someone who loves to go out, they play bingo 2 times a week, they walk the track at the community center, they go to lunch with their friends, they're in a book club, and they play bridge 3 times a week. That's a social level that they're very comfortable with. A person like that, if all of a sudden they're no longer reading, they've dropped out of the bridge club, they've quit exercising, they're not leaving the house much at all, again, those are red flags. And again, they can be very gradual. You have to kind of keep your antenna up.
Let's move on to financial issues, money handling.
Mm-hmm. But certainly if, for instance, your aging mother is no longer able to take care of her checkbook and write checks and pay bills in a timely manner, or is not comfortable doing it online or knowledgeable enough about doing it online, then I think it is time for some intervention at that point. But that would be a red flag that bills are going unpaid and there are second and third notices coming. I think another sign of financial issues is if a scam has occurred. If someone has taken advantage of that person and is having them send money regularly, or has found access to their bank account and they're cleaning it out. So just making sure you're aware of financial issues. And at that point, certainly that's, in a sense, a preventative measure, is gaining power of attorney when the person is still agreeable to having you do so that you can have access to financial records or medical records as needed. But to have a family member whose name is also on the checkbook and you have access to those bank accounts and can monitor that, it's a good time to get that in advance before the problem occurs, rather than when cognition is poor, judgment is poor, or there's resistance. Not even opening the mail or opening it and just leaving it sit there and forgetting about it, not remembering, oh, I have to pay this bill, or not having the executive functioning to know this bill came on Thursday, let me put it in the stack of bills I'm going to pay on Saturday, to remember to do that. Just looking at, if you have an avalanche of mail building up and most of it's been unattended to, or even like magazines and newspapers that have never been read, again, another red flag that things aren't quite as they should be.
What about driving issues?
That's the biggest one, and one of the most critical. Certainly if there's an accident or a lot of little fender benders, or someone is driving and they get lost and don't know how to find their way home. That's food for thought to think maybe it's time to either give up the license or only drive with someone else in the car. And as we talk about assisted living, that would be an advantage to assisted living. They drive you where you need to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about the house itself, inside, outside, particularly the kitchen area, which is a place we visit a lot in our homes, and it has a lot of clues in there, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. It does. Certainly, food that has been allowed to spoil in the refrigerator, or you open the container and it looks like a penicillin experiment, or certainly bad odors. Dishes that have stacked up and have not been washed.
And I guess we're looking for signs of neglect, but unusual neglect.
Yes.
And maybe even, would it be fair to say, chronic neglect, inside the house, outside the house, right?
Yes. Imagine a widow is living alone in the house she and her husband shared for 60 years. And the outside is looking pretty bad. The gardens are overrun with weeds. The pots that used to have flowers are chipped and broken and full of weeds. The gutters are falling down. I mean, those are big red flags that the maintenance issues either are not being addressed or they're not even being seen, not even being recognized as a problem.
Not even an awareness of that.
So the outdoor signs as well as indoor are all paramount to put together. And again, adult children visiting their widowed mother may become so accustomed to how the house looks, they're not seeing it. And that's when maybe a professional or a well-meaning neighbor or church member could say, I'm concerned about your mother. She's losing weight. I brought her dinner the other night. I know she didn't eat a bite of it. You know, that an outsider with a more objective opinion could raise those red flags.
Well, that's where the input from their friends could be very important.
Some people may be hesitant to step up to the plate. You know, the well-meaning neighbor may think it's none of my business, I'm not going to say anything. But sometimes it's more of a disservice to keep quiet than to say something.
And then lastly, you need to look at yourself as a caregiver, correct? And the impact that this is having on you and your life.
Absolutely. One caregiver, I said, how did you know when it was time to make a change in your mother's living arrangements? And they said, her loneliness was crushing, which I thought was such a wonderful descriptor. But because she was so lonely, she was calling family members 20 and 30 times a day for minuscule questions and information because she was so lonely. So certainly I think when it becomes crushing for the senior as well as the caregiver, and when you're exhausted, when you have been over to mom's house 3 times today and she still wants me to come over one more time to check the locks before bedtime, that exhaustion level, you know, you hit a point where I just can't do any more. I can't.
It begins to affect the caregiver's health.
Absolutely, yes. And when the caregiver's health goes, the whole stack of dominoes falls down.
Yeah.
Everything falls apart.
Now, when you look at these signs, these clues, if you will, and you come to a conclusion that maybe it's time to talk about it, how do you initiate this conversation?
I think the time to initiate it is about 5 years before the clues start popping up. To always
nice,
make
wouldn't
it be a topic of conversation, that this may have to be an option. We certainly hope moving out of this home that you've lived in for all these years will not have to happen, but you never know what the future will hold. So that it's always a little bit of an option out there on the horizon, and that it's not like, you know, you're just springing something on
The
them.
first time you talked about it, yeah. Now, what about in-home care as a good sort of interim or an alternative?
Well, I think the whole goal for most people is to age in place, to live in their home as long as they're able to safely. And that's kind of the key, is safety. And that's a good place to start when the senior is living alone, but there's starting to be some red flags, some signs of problems. That in-home care, non-medical care, would be the first step.
Now, when it comes time where you feel, and your parent or loved one may agree, that it's time for assisted living, what's your best advice on helping a person choose a facility?
I always say it's very much like taking your child to visit colleges. You walk on a college campus, you take the tour, and you kind of know if this would be a good fit or not. I think you usually get that general instinct or sense when you go into a facility of some sort. Certainly it's good to just see the cosmetic appearance, and there are some beautiful facilities, just gorgeous facilities, but also to observe the staff, how they work, if they're friendly, if they're conscientious, and go during a time when you could have a meal and see what it's like to sit in the dining room and eat, because that would be where you're taking most of your meals. And to visit a lot of facilities so you have a good basis of comparison, and visit facilities at different times during the day so that you know, first thing in the morning, things are good, everybody's up moving and it's lively and fun. But about 7 or 8 o'clock at night, what's it like? Is it noisy? Is it quiet? Is there still a lot of hustle and bustle? Or you just get a general sense of the rhythm of the day at a facility.
Pat, thank you very much for being on The Best Times and giving us a few clues as to how to make the right choice when it comes to assisted living.
My pleasure.
When Calvin Poole was in his mid-30s, his genetic luck ran out. His mother suffered from glaucoma, and unfortunately he became the only one of her 11 children to contract the degenerative eye disease. Today at age 62, Calvin is blind in one eye and has severely limited vision in the other, but he refuses to be defined by his disability. And today Calvin is president of the Tennessee Association of Blind Athletes. a group that plays a surprisingly wide variety of adaptive sports, including one that you've probably never heard of, goalball. I'd like you to meet Calvin Poole. At the Hollywood Community Center, Calvin Poole is putting his goalball team through its paces. 2 of the 6 players on the team are totally blind. Calvin and the remaining players are visually impaired to varying degrees and wear eye shades to level the playing field. Goalball was invented just after World War II to give returning veterans with catastrophic eye injuries a physical activity in which they could participate.
Just played on the volleyball size court that's 60 feet long, 30 feet wide. And there's orientation lines on the floor where a blind or visually impaired player can orientate himself to the floor. And it's played by rolling a soccer-type ball. It looks like a basketball, has bells inside of it. And you roll it along the floor in the bowling ball fashion, try to get it past your other 3 opponents, which is center, right wing, and the left wing. If you get it into the net, it's a point.
Today, goalball is a recognized Paralympic sport, and Calvin's team competes in state and regional competitions. And goalball isn't the only adaptive sport available to blind athletes. Beep baseball uses equipment that emits sounds so players can hit and catch the ball. The local chapter of the Association of Blind Athletes meets weekly for bowling. With help from sighted spotters and pilots, blind athletes can enjoy everything from snow skiing to tandem cycling. Calvin describes himself as an avid sportsman, but the diagnosis he received more than 30 years ago almost put an end to his athletic pursuits.
It changed my entire life, from one of going to work every day and being independent to a person that has to depend on someone else for mobility and things like that. But I'm making it work. I took lemons and made lemonade out of it.
Glaucoma is a degenerative eye disease that creates pressure on the optic nerve. This is what normal vision looks like. And here is the same scene approximating the blurred tunnel vision of glaucoma.
On my left side, I see it diagonal. I have no sight on my right side, but I do have some 20 by 2200 on my left sometimes in right conditions.
Calvin gives goalball and other adaptive sports credit for bringing him out of a deep depression. By staying active, he has lost weight, and his blood pressure and diabetes are under control. And oddly enough, Calvin enjoys playing sports now more than he ever did as a sighted athlete.
Because I have to use more than just my eyes. Sometimes when you sighted, you just have a tendency to use your eyes to do a lot of stuff. Now I have to use my hearing, my hands, my touch, my 6 senses. Because this game, you have to be really aware of where you are. And it's fun. It's more fun to me now, yeah. These guys have become my brothers from another mother. And I think they all feel the same. They love being able to be busy like this, playing goalball, and it's just a camaraderie that's just unexplainable. And because we have this thing in common where we talk about the blindness, talk about mobility, what's new products out there. There's a new app that'll help us read a little better, or there's an app to navigate us through the town a little better, that kind of thing. So it's been great, and I think they love it as well.
Calvin told me that he was determined not to let himself be defined by his disability. And he has a word of advice for all of us.
Never give up. Keep moving. If you keep moving, you're a hard target.
Prostate cancer is the second most common form of cancer in men, second only to skin cancer. It develops primarily in older men, with 6 out of 10 cases diagnosed in men over age 65. And it is the second leading cause of cancer death in men. The good news about prostate cancer is that more than 2 million men in America can call themselves prostate cancer survivors. If the cancer is diagnosed early, then the survival rate is nearly 100%. Maybe it's time to find out more about prostate cancer and you. What is the prostate?
So prostate is a gland in male reproductive organs which secrete seminal fluid, and it also provides media to the sperms so that they can travel from one place to another.
What is prostate cancer?
Prostate gland, it usually enlarge while we aged, and at some point it get cancerous tissue or tumor tissue. So when a tumor occurs in prostate, this is what we call prostate cancer.
What are the risk factors?
Age is the biggest risk factor for prostate cancer because no matter who it is, prostate gland is going to get abnormal in almost every man. One of the major risk factors, like if there is a family history of prostate cancer, then obviously you may be at risk. Other thing is like obesity is one of the risk factors. If you are on a particular diet, you are eating more or less, and these are some of the main risk factors.
Are there warning signs?
Some typical signs are like either decreased force in urine while you're urinating, and sometimes you may see a blood in urine. That is one sign. And you may feel some discomfort in pelvic region here and some pain in the bones.
How is prostate cancer diagnosed?
It is advisable, like you should see your physician right away, and you should go for a PSA test. PSA is a gold standard test, and we typically do it after the age of 50 anyway. So if your PSA levels are high, then that is again a warning sign for prostate cancer.
Can prostate cancer be cured?
Basically, if you diagnose prostate cancer at early stage, it's not difficult to treat. We can treat it very easily, and prognosis is fairly well. So the primary tumor is not a problem if we can diagnose at early stage. Problem occurs like when we are diagnosing a patient at stage 4, then this tumor has gone beyond the prostate and has localized in other parts of the body. So that is the problem. That is where we are focusing on right now.
What treatments are available?
If it is hormone responsive, then we can use flutamide and that kind of treatment. Those are fairly standard treatments. But if cancer is beyond that and it is not hormone responsive anymore, then we have to use either docetaxel or cabazitaxel. These are like some new line of therapies which we are using. Surgery is first line of action. If there is a tumor which is fairly localized tumor, then surgery is the best option. So all these options, what I'm telling you, these are in addition to surgery.
What research is being done?
With prostate, one serious thing is like it metastasizes to bone. And when it is in the bone, then our treatment options are very limited. So people are working towards that, like how we can either stop metastasis of the tumor, and if metastasize there, then how we can treat them. So people are trying to develop some therapies which can stop metastasis first of all, and if tumor is metastasized, then how we can just find out differential signaling pathways in those metastatic lesions, because they are behaving differently than the primary tumor. So this is the area going in basic science research area. But at the same time, we are looking for some more advanced therapies like nanoparticle technology, so that drug we are taking, we can encapsulate in the nanoparticles, we can conjugate them with specific antibodies which can hold this whole complex to the metastatic lesions. So that way we can treat those metastatic tumors more efficiently than the conventional methods.
Want more information about life after 50? Go online to watch more shows and find more resources. And send us your feedback and story ideas to besttimes@wkno.org. That's all for this edition of The Best Times. Please join us next week for more stories about life after 50. Until then, I'm Chris Hardaway. Thanks for watching. Good night. Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plough Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you.